Every time I've made content about brain chips or brain scans being used to decode your inner monologue, people ask me, what if you do not have one? Well, a group of Japanese researchers just answered that question, and yes, they can still read your mind. Even the researchers themselves said that this technology has the potential to be very dangerous, and we'll talk about it. Yes, we have known for some time that you can decode the inner monologue. This has been used for people who no longer have the ability to speak or just cannot communicate so that they can speak using an interface. We've even seen technology like this used to decode inner images or even create images of people's brains. But for people who lack an inner monologue, that becomes more complicated because these systems are not designed to work from areas of the brain that are not interested in language. Well, what is the solution? Let's look at parts of the brain that are not used for language. Turns out that too can be decoded and gives us a lot of information about how people who don't speak to themselves in their heads actually communicate. For this study, researchers had patients look at hundreds of videos while they scanned their brain. Meanwhile, a computer would stand by and would analyze the data and turn it into words. Yes, it takes a technology that can look at images in your brain as you are thinking them and then decodes it into a sentence. They separated the brain into the semantic parts and the visual parts, and it was powerful enough that just asking somebody to think about what they saw could be decoded successfully into words. Meaning they created an interface that acts as an internal monologue for people who were not actively thinking about it. To my knowledge, no one has studied in depth what it's actually like in somebody's brain who does not talk to themselves. I imagine that it has something to do with thinking in images in 3D space more than two-dimensional words, but you can tell me. Now, you may identify, and correctly so, this kind of technology has the ability to do a whole lot of good to help people communicate. It could even help children who are nonverbal who maybe don't actually think in the way that other people do traditionally when we think of speech. It also has the enormous potential to helping us understand how our brains work, how they develop, and it could even be applied to animals. You could find out what your cat has to say that is nasty about you, and I'm pretty sure my cat has a lot to say. But beyond that enormous potential, and the researchers themselves pointed this out, it has a huge potential for harm. We already know law enforcement has tried to use EEGs, things like polygraphs, things to figure out what is truth. Those are notoriously inefficient, but the technology is getting better and it will be used. What we don't want is 1984, where your thoughts are monitored, and if you have a bad thought, you might be liable for it. That's a possibility nobody wants to see. I am somewhat comforted in that in grad school I participated in a 7-month-long lying and deception study, and they could not make heads or tails of my brain. Not with an EEG, not with a polygraph, not with an fMRI. Whatever it is about my brain, it's not easily decoded. I have ADHD, and I do now have evidence that whatever's going on in my brain, it doesn't look standard. This is because not everyone's brain develops the same way, and not everyone uses the same neural pathways. You might be an outlier. But if you are an outlier, what if it's just incorrect? This is why polygraphs are not admissible in court. They do not give evidence, and I'm concerned about a world where people might think stuff like this is truth, and the people who usually make these laws are not exactly, scientifically literate. So there is a good chance anybody who has a non-standard way that their brain processes information, they're not going to be as easily detected, but that is also a risk. If you look like someone who might be thinking bad things, yeah, we do not want this future. This research can be classified with a long scientific tradition of researchers who are afraid of what they've created. We can at least be comforted in knowing that while humanity finds the worst ways to use technology and science, we also find good ways to use it too. Nuclear power provides efficient energy systems that can power whole cities, and it is really not that bad for the environment in the grand scheme of things. If, we figure out where to put the waste, which there are solutions underground. Anyway, I think the message here is that I would like to talk to my pet.